Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Fang of Critias Yugioh deck profile for March 2024. Wanted to update the legendary dragon decks, and wanted to start off with one of my favorites, being the Fang of Critias deck. This is the one used by Seto Kaiba, focusing on being able to fusion summon your many different trap cards that you run in the deck into the many different dragons that Critias could become when combined with said traps. We have over 4 different ones to utilize in the deck, giving us a wide variety of extra deck monsters to go into with some pretty awesome monster effects once those cards are summoned out into the field. I wanted to go for more of a pure variant with the Critias deck, not focusing too much on the Lair of Darkness setup that a lot of people mix the Fang of Critias cards in with for the support, but still very happy with the results of the deck. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the spells first for this deck profile, since, one of the spells is our most important card in the deck, and that is the Fang of Critias. Running 3 copies of this card. It's also treated as Legendary Dragon Critias. You send 1 trap from your hand or field to the graveyard that is listed on a fusion monster that can only be special summoned with the Fang of Critias. If that card is set, reveal it, then special summon that fusion monster from your extra deck. You go and activate 1, the Fang of Critias per turn. So just like with a fusion monster, if that monster is set on the field, you have the option to, fusion summon using it, since you know what the card is. Same can be said with your traps that are on the field, but we run 3 Fang of Critias, so we have options to go into the many different fusion monsters like Mere Force Dragon, Doom Virus Dragon, and even Destruction Dragon, using the Fang of Critias spell card for summoning out those monsters. Just needing the spell and 1 trap card means for a pretty good investment for a fusion summon compared to, having to use polymerization with 2 or more monsters to summon them out. For more of our spell support, we also run 3 copies of Allure of Darkness. This is so we can get to the spell all the quicker, because we just need some draw power to be able to go into and grab 1 of our Fang of Critias spells to be able to then use against our opponent, and hopefully also being able to draw into our traps needed for that specific monster as well. So 3 copies of Allure of Darkness, since the majority of the monsters that we run in the main deck are dark attribute for us to at least hopefully draw into and use as the banish cost for this card. We're also running 2 copies of Super Polymerization, just as being able to extend into more fusion plays using our dragon monsters on the field, and then being able to summon out some bigger dragon monsters onto the field also, and also potentially be able to use some of the resources of our opponents using those monsters to get out some other boss monster dragons in the extra deck as well. Also running 2 copies of Triple Tactics Talent, because we just need that search power to be able to go into our deck to grab the Fang of Critias. If our opponent stops, like let's say Allure of Darkness with Ash Blossom, we at least then have this card to be able to draw 2, or even take away a resource of our opponents, but most of the time I use it for a draw 2 to be able to grab the Fang of Critias all the faster. Same search power in the form of Pot of Prosperity, running 2 copies of this card. I thought about running a 3rd copy of this card if I were to do so. You can take out the last spell that I run in the, in the main deck, which is the Gold Sarcophagus, just being able to banish the Fang of Critias. And then if you use the traps as just a stall power for the deck, you at least then can grab Fang of Critias off of the Gold Sarc after it has been banished. But that's just player preference. If you want to run 3 Prosperity, it just comes down to you using your extract for the banish costs, which the extract is very important for our plays, since, that's where we go for most of our fusion summons. But at least with Pot of Prosperity, you can choose the specifics you want to banish off of this card. And that's it for the spells. Moving on now to the monsters. We run 3 copies of Lilith, Lady of Lament. If this card is normal summon, with its original attack becomes 1,000. And then also quick effect, you can tribute 1 dark monster to reveal 3 normal traps from your deck. Your opponent randomly chooses 1 for you to set on the field, then shuffle the rest back into the deck. You can only use this effect of Lilith, Lady of Lament, once per turn. But all the traps needed for the majority of our fusion summons are normal traps. That comes in the form of Mere Force, Crush Card Virus, Ring of Destruction, and the last one being Tyrant Wing. We use all of these cards for the 4 different fusion summons for the Fang of Critias, so the fact that Lilith, Lady of Lament, can search out those cards makes it all the better for us just to be able to add those cards off of this monster. I also run 1 copy of Loris, Lady of Lament, and the 1 copy of Malice, Lady of Lament, for more of the tribute option with Malice, to then be able to target a normal trap that's banished in your graveyard and set it back onto the field, or place on the bottom of the deck when it leaves the field, so at least you have another way to recycle some of those traps. And Loris being able to shuffle back 6 or 3 of your normal traps that are banished or in your graveyard graveyard and place them on the bottom of the deck in any order, then draw one card for every 3 banished, giving you more of a draw power to go into if we have to invest a lot of the traps into more of a stall game until we can draw into the Fang of Critias. Also, 2 copies of Absolute King Backjack. During your opponent's turn, you can banish this card from your graveyard, activate the top card of your deck. If it was a normal trap, set it on your field, otherwise send it to the graveyard. That set can be activated this turn, and if this card's sent to the graveyard, you can look at 3 cards from the top of your deck, place them on the top of the deck in any order. So more setup for those traps, also being able then just to banish King Backjack to then set the needed trap that we had back onto the field for us to either use or use for the Fang of Critias. With the last of the main deck monsters being 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, I thought of running other hand traps, maybe more of a dark attribute spot for this one as well, if you wish to at least have more of a target to go for Allure of Darkness also. But now, the biggest part of the deck is the trap lineup, since that's the main focus that we go for Fang of Critias. So 3 copies of Mirror Force, just needing it for our Mirror Force Dragon. I would also say this one is definitely one they don't see coming. When you activate it, you can destroy a good majority of monsters. One of the better defensive lineups to go for, destroying all of your opponent's attack position monsters when your opponent's monster declares an attack, so better protection until you even draw into the needed spell card for your plays. Also running the 2 copies of Crush Card Virus. Now this is for the Doom Virus Dragon, needing the Fang of Critias using Crush Card Virus. For its summon, you can tribute a monster, a dark monster with 1000 or less attack, to use the more nerfed power of this card on the field. But if you summon out Lilith, it does become 1000 attack, meaning you do have the requirements met with this card and also your use of Malice on the field, or even our monster being Absolute King Backjack, all available to use with the Crush Card Virus if you don't have the Fang of Critias to go for the tribute play. Also 2 copies of Ring of Destruction, limited once again just like Crush Card, but still able to inflict some burn damage and destruction against your opponent. But still, this one is used to go into the Destruction Dragon, one of the newer forms of the Fang of Critias, being special summoned out, and then also being able to target a monster card your opponent controls, destroy it, and if it was a monster card, inflict damage to your opponent equal to its original attack. So much better having the original effect of Ring of Destruction in the form of a dragon monster. To have more copies, since I would say Destruction Dragon is definitely one of the more powerhouse ones, 2 copies of Loop of Destruction. Its name becomes Ring of Destruction while on the field, so you can activate this continuous trap. Using its own effect, once per turn, if a monster on the field is destroyed by a card effect, except damage step, you can target one monster on the field, destroy it, and each player takes 500 damage. So this works in tandem with Destruction Dragon, being able to destroy a monster of your opponents with that card, and then use Loop of Destruction for an initial play as well. You can also use it if you need to go into another copy of Destruction Dragon, but that's only if you don't have the Ring of Destruction to begin with also. With the last trap for that play being our Tyrant Wing. This is to summon out Tyrant Burst Dragon. Targeting a dragon monster also in the field, you can equip this card to it. It gains 400 attack and defense and can make up to 2 attacks on monsters during the battle phase. And once per turn during the end phase, if the monster equipped this card attacked an opponent's monster, destroy this card. So still a great power play to go with your dragon monsters, but still needed also for Tyrant Burst Dragons Fusion Summon on the field to begin with as well. With the rest of the traps being Infinite Impermanence, a 3 of count. Lilith can also search out this normal trap, but most of the time you do want to go for the ones needed for the Fang of Critias play. And also more searches in the form of Evenly Matched. This is if your opponent goes first against you, you can at least have the potential for your opponent either to add this or one of your needed traps for your monster to summon out. And the last trap being 1 copy of Rivalry of Warlords. Each player can only control 1 type of monster, but our majority of monsters in the deck are dragon monsters, so we're not really limited, but we can limit a good number of plays depending on the deck that our opponent is using. Moving on now to the extra deck. Some of the numbers for my dragons may differ. I only have 1 Mirror Force Dragon, but if you want to run 2 copies, you could always take out a copy of Tyrant Burst Dragon, which I'm running 2 copies of, or one of the generic fusion dragons I'm running to go with Super Polymerization in the deck as well. Since we do run the 3 Mirror Force, it must be special summoned with the Fang of Critias using Mirror Force. Also, when a monster you control is targeted for an attack or by an opponent's card effect, except during the damage step, you can destroy all cards your opponent controls. So this card is just pure destruction, having the abilities of Mirror Force, and also an additional way, if it's an opponent's card effect, destroying all cards your opponent control, having a 2800 attack point monster, which if you also equip Tyrant, Wing onto it, making it all the scarier to swing into your opponent's cards as well. So we definitely run 2, but just take out one of the Tyrant Burst or one of the generic fusions. Same with Doom Virus Dragon. It must be special summoned with the Fang of Critias using Crush Card Virus. If this card's special summoned, look at your opponent's hand, all monsters they control, and all cards they draw until their 3rd turn after this card's activation, and destroy all monsters with 1500 or more attack. So it's almost like an errata version of Crush Card Virus in the form of a dragon, so much better to get out than the actual Crush Card Virus, because then it just has to be special summon on the field to utilize its card effect. Also 2 copies of Destruction Dragon, once again, just like Ring of Destruction, a non-errata form in the form of a dragon that can destroy your opponent's cards, and if it was a monster card, inflict damage to them, with the last monster being Tyrant Burst Dragon for the Fang of Critias dragons. With this card, it can attack all your opponent's monsters once each. You can target a face-up monster you control, equip this card to it, and it gains 400 attack, and can make up to 3 attacks, so depending on the dragon you equip it onto, it's an unlimited form of Tyrant Wing to swing for some pretty big numbers altogether thanks to this dragon. For our generic cards, the 1 copy of Garura, the 1 Dragostapelia, the 1 Starving Venom Predapower, and the 1 Triple Veritum for some of our fusion option targets for super polymerization. And lastly, the Link monsters being 1 IP Masquerena, the 1 SP Little Knight, the 1 Sky Striker Azalea, the 1 Nightmare Unicorn, and the 1 Access Code Talker for the option to be able to go into our Link monsters. Doesn't have an opt-in, but mostly with our extra deck being able to be utilized by our main deck monsters that we use also, if not searching for our traps. And then as for some of the go-to plays, this is a very, very easy deck to use. It all comes down to if you can get into your draw power using cards like Allure of Darkness and Pot of Prosperity, drawing into the needed trap, and then your go-to spell being the Fang of Critias, activating both, going into your fusion dragon of choice, depending on the trap you have on the field, and then also being able to either protect that dragon with the additional traps that we run in the deck, also having its own card effect, so depending on which one, you either have a monster that can protect you from your opponent's cards, one that can attack when equipped onto a better dragon, one that can destroy all your opponent's monsters. It just comes down to what trap you have and which version you want to summon out, making the deck all the more fun to go into also. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Like I said, I'll be looking at some of the other legendary dragons, so definitely look forward to updates to those decks as well. I'll see which one I want to focus on first, but let me know down in the comments if you'd like to see the Eye of Timaeus or the Claw of Hermos next for an update. But as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.